We are now joined by Helena Barroco, a Portuguese diplomat and coordinator of the Global Platform for Syrian Students. Helena, can you tell us how big of a crisis the education system in Syria is facing now? And
Okay.
can you also provide us with some figures?
Yes, indeed. So, unfortunately, the education is facing a very huge crisis in Syria due to the fact that the war is now lasting for almost 40 years. And so not only there is a huge problem with the destruction of the buildings and so of the infrastructure, but also because of the population that have fled the country. And so I can say, to summarize, that Syria was one of the countries in the region with the highest levels of scholarity. So at the primary school level, almost 90% of children were scholarized. For the secondary school, I think they were at 65%, and at higher education, more than 25%. And nowadays, the figures show that almost 9% of children between 7 and 17 years are out of school. So it gives an idea of the dimension of the crisis.
Let's say hopefully the Syrian crisis ends. How long would it take to fix the damage, and how much money would it cost?
Well, regarding the time necessary to rebuild the system, because it's not only the infrastructure, it's the system, it's the human resources. Studies show that it might take 10 years at least. So it means a whole generation of people who might be a lost generation from the education point of view. Regarding the costs, I must be honest, I have no idea, but it's really a huge budget needed.
Obviously the damage is huge, but how would this impact the students and the country itself? Also the Syrian refugees who are living under very stressing conditions.
Yes, it's a whole problem. I mean, it's not only a question of education, because it impacts on the way people face the future, the way people see themselves, and it's also the social fabric that is affected. So it's not a simple problem, and it's really a critical topic, because it impacts on the social problems, it impacts on the level of development, and so it's really critical to address this topic.
So can you tell us then about your initiative and how you are trying to help Syrian students?
So the initiative for which I work, it's a new initiative which was launched by former President of Portugal, and it focuses on higher education. Why higher education? Because President Sampaio, the name of our former president who chairs this initiative, realized that there were no collective multilateral efforts towards addressing higher education needs and emergencies. While, for instance, for children, there are UNICEF, there are programs developed by big NGOs, there is also the agenda of the MDGs, but for higher education there is nothing. And you might easily imagine that once the peace will be back, the country has to be rebuilt, and so it really needs people well equipped to rebuild the country. And so he decided to create an emergency program of scholarships for higher education for Syrians. And we started, just to give you an idea of the needs, we made a call for applications online during 10 days, and we received more than 2,500 applications in 10 days.
Wow. But do you have partners?
Oh yes, of course. Partnerships is at the core of this initiative. No one can do it alone. And we structure this initiative with three pillars. One is the network of partners, so international organizations such as the Council of Europe, the League of Arab States, IOM, etc., as well as foundations and the private sector. We have an academic consortium, so the group of universities that are willing to receive Syrian students and provide them with tuition fees waivers, partial or full. And the third thing is an emergency fund, because we started this initiative from the scratch with €0 in our account. So we made lots, and we are still making, of course, fundraising. And I must say that this initiative until now only received private monies, and sometimes international organizations also give some gifts to it.
But does this mean that the international community itself is not doing enough to help these students, and what more is needed to be done?
I think there are no enough efforts because there is a huge need and very little answers. What I would like is really to scale up the efforts that we have already done. So far, we have about 150 students resuming their studies thanks to our scholarships. And when I say ours, I mean contributions from all partners. But we need more countries supporting the program, more universities hosting Syrian students, and more donors to pay the scholarships.
On what basis do you choose your students?
I would say that there are three criteria. First of all is the academic criteria, so the level of results that the students have got so far. Secondly, there is also a kind of a civic profile that we try to identify. So for us it's important that the students have already made some services to the community in order to see if in the future they will also be multipliers. So there is this civic profile that is taken into consideration. And the third set of criteria is related, for instance, with gender issues or minorities issues or very, very humanitarian situations.
Given the complicated situation now in Syria, what are the channels you use to make the contact with the students?
Online. There is something that I was most surprised, is that even if sometimes electricity is only available 1 hour per day, or if connectivity, for instance, works from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., all people are nowadays able to be connected for some time. So connectivity is and online communication was key for the launch of this project on the one hand, and of course the support of the partners, because all our partners have disseminated the initiative within their networks. And so the problem was not being known, the problem is being able to answer to the demand.
Wow. My question is, you give scholarships or tuition fees waivers, and it has to be in universities outside Syria, I assume.
Yes.
So how is the challenge to bring these students from this situation, get them out of the country and give them the access to these universities, and what universities are helping?
Okay, so I must say that even if there is a huge crisis, I would say in the Middle East for sure, but also in Europe, as you know, there is some economic crisis. I must say that universities are much more available to help than one could think. So the problem is not to get availability from universities to receive students. The problem is to have enough money to pay the scholarships, because even if a student has tuition fee waivers, he has to live. He has to be housed, to eat, to cover study-related costs. So the major challenge was at the level of raising funds. Now, on your questions, how to get students out from Syria or be placed in another country, I must say that we had a wonderful experience. And let me give the example of my country. In my country, we received now 70 students. And so, with the support of the government, we organized the transportation of those students. So the first time there was even an Air Force plane that went to Lebanon to pick up the students, and the meeting point was in Beirut. The second time I went myself, and we organized the visa, all the visa issues were treated in a special way.
Yes,
there is something that I would like
regarding visas.
But this is the thing, an emergency program cannot be compared with a normal, a regular program. And an emergency program should present the student the full package. It's not enough to say, okay, you got a scholarship, so you should be in Lisbon the 1st October. It doesn't work, because the student alone cannot cope with all these problems of visa, transportation, etc. So an emergency program, and this is one of our main features as an emergency program, is that you should offer the package and all the services ready. And we were able to do that thanks to the support of the government and coordination.
Okay, so you are what is the target? How many students do you want to reach, to help?
Well, we don't have a target number in the sense that as much as possible, because the crisis is so huge, as I mentioned at the beginning. As much as possible, but of course we would like to scale up our efforts, and we would like to reach 1,000 students. And why 1,000? Because we still have on hold 700 places offered by universities with tuition fees waivers, waiting for candidates. And the reason why there are not yet candidates placed in those universities, it's because we lack funds to pay the top-up scholarships. So if we get more donors, more supporters, we can immediately place up to 700 students. Everything is prepared, they are selected, universities offered the places, and this is really a lack of funds.
How much money would you need?
It would cost $5 million for 2 years for these 700 students. We have made the calculations. These places are in different countries, so countries have different level of costs. And so we calculated for the 700 places that we are available in different universities, such as Lebanon, Turkey, or even Belgium, Brussels, it would cost $5 million for 700 students for 2 years.
Just to make it clear, the $5 million is the money you need, or the money in total? Do you have a chunk of this money already, or
for
not?
the 700 students, okay?
Okay.
So this is what I need, let's say, to fill this goal and to be able to use this fantastic offer. That I couldn't so far use because of lack of money to pay the top-up scholarships.
Amongst your plans is to take this step forward, which is to organize an international conference on higher education in emergency zones. Have you started this, and have you started campaigning? What is the feedback so far?
Yes, this is our next step, if you want. Because reflecting on this experience, small-scale experience so far, but there are others experienced by other partners, namely, for instance, with the crisis in Iraq some years ago. We realized that, unfortunately, crises, there are everywhere and every time. And so if you think of, and let me just give you some additional examples, Gaza, Libya, Yemen, Ukraine, etc. In the end, the point is that all crises, humanitarian crises, have a higher education dimension. And the problem is always the same. There is no rapid response mechanism that can be implemented each time there is a crisis. And so this means that students are waiting for an opportunity to resume their studies. They are drop out of the universities. Funding has to be made from the scratch, and this makes things go very slowly. And so we would like to reflect about the experiences and make some recommendations. How to figure out a very effective and not heavy mechanism that could be implemented at the higher education level each time there is a humanitarian crisis. And so we are preparing this conference. It will take place in Brussels on the 16th and 17th December.
So it has been decided?
Exactly, there is a date. There is already supporters, namely the Council of Europe and the League of Arab States. And we are finalizing these issues to work out the program, the recommendations. It should be a starting point of a process of raising awareness on this topic.
All the best of luck with this.
Thank you so much
for joining us and for the interesting
interview.
Thank you for the interest.
Thank you, Helena.
Thank you.